Well, it's not working.
Try those new things.
Nā mai haere mai. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of council this morning. I'll just run through a few housekeeping issues and they're still in a COVID response. I think it's something we should do, I guess, most meetings. The emergency exits from this room are to the door on my right and the double doors that we entered through. Toilet facilities are in the foyer immediately outside the council chamber. Councillors are reminded to sit at least 1 metre apart and maintain the distance even during breaks. There will be no handshaking. I'm failing with that one. Patting on the back, well, hardly anybody pats us on the back. Masks are to be worn in all public areas in the building, always entrances, etc. Please use the hand sanitizer available in the room and when you come into the building. If you're unwell, please leave the meeting and the building. And if you need to sneeze or cough, please do this at your elbow. If you're a member of the members of the public present, including anybody who's not part of the ES work bubble, masks must be worn throughout the meeting, and you must maintain a distance of 2 metres from it at all times. All visitors are required to comply with all safety rules and health and safety legislation. If you hear a fire or emergency alarm, please leave the building by the closest exit as outlined and follow the advice of staff members. Right, we'll move to apologies. We have an apology from Eric Roy this morning.
I'll second.
By Neville, seconded by Lloyd. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Right, number 3 is actually the recognition of the service and retirement, retirement of Colin Young. Is
Colin's online, so we could ask him to.
Hi, Colin. Oh, there you are. I can see you there now.
Good morning.
And your wife's there too. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
It's just a shame we can't be doing this face to face, but for understandable reasons we can't. But this is the next best thing, Colin. Look, I'll just say a few words about Colin. Colin started with this organisation at the old Southern Catchment Board in 1979 as a graduate engineer. He became the site construction engineer in 1983, involved with the upgrading of the stop banks in Wyndham. He's also overseen significant stop grade upgrades and construction, including Gore and Matara townships, the construction of the Winton Dam. Colin was the design engineer for the Areti flood protection scheme from 1990 to 1993. He's also provided essential support to the emergency management team for 6 significant floods between 1980 and 2020. And I'm told that in the midst of a flood event, Colin's always proved himself to have a real understanding of exactly what the rivers are capable of and what they're likely to do, how the flood protection schemes will hold up, and his sense of calm is always, in the midst of an emergency, has been always reassuring to everybody around him. Colin's utilised his skill in a variety of ways, including spending many years as a team leader, reviewing and upgrading the entire catchment rating base. He's played a major role in all of the council's infrastructure assets, including stop banks, dams and drains into our GIS platform. In recent time, Colin and the late Paddy Haynes put together the council's climate resilience shovel-ready program applications for the urban flood protection upgrades for Gore, Matara and Wyndham, and also the Lake Hawkins station replacement. You're going to leave a very large hole, Colin. We'd like to wish you all the best for your retirement, but just like to acknowledge the tremendous input you've had to this organisation over such a long time, and you take a lot of knowledge away with you, and I hope some of it's written down, Colin, because you've made a real impact. And the floods in recent years have just shown your skill, that those flood banks held up, and the technology you had in the days when you were doing that was all manual, And I think that's probably one of your lasting testaments, I guess, is just how well those banks held up when they had a real test, particularly on the Mataura in the last couple of years. So look, thank you for everything. We normally would have you up here for a photo and handing over a gift that we'll no doubt get to you. I'll ask if any other councillors want to say anything before we hand over to you, Colin. I've got Neville, then Lloyd.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Colin, there's a bit of echo in the room. Do we fix that? It's not me.
A slight technical hitch there at the moment. We'll carry on in a second.
You sure it's not you, Neville? You were lighting up.
Is that better? No?
You're lighting up.
Mine's on mute.
Sometimes it's just.
His lighting up. It's where the sound's coming from.
We're right now. No?
We'll
I'll just
try.
have to carry on.
Odd, like booming voice.
Yes. Yeah, Colin, on behalf of Emergency Management, I just want to thank you for the sage and calm and reasoned advice you gave us, particularly during the last floods, because your extensive and intimate knowledge of river behaviour and the ability of our flood banks to manage flood levels really drove a lot of the decisions during that last flood and gave us confidence. It's the reasoned manner in which you actually gave your advice. You're always calm, even when the rest of us were rushing around. And it's just showed the depth of knowledge that you have and the work that you've put into the flood management systems across this province over many years paid off, and we're really grateful for that. So we'll miss you as a person, we'll miss your knowledge when you go, but we'll miss you as a person as well. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Neville. Lloyd.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was a bit of a shock to the organisation when you headed away for that little illness you had a couple of years ago, and then we started to realise the wealth of understanding you had. But I just really want to say, Colin, to you that I really enjoyed the visit you had out with me a year or so ago now, and your knowledge and understanding of the water through the Arete down by our boundary there, and the issues and the technical stuff that you had to work through to actually make that bank work with very little material. So I've always enjoyed working with you. I've enjoyed the conversations with you, and you've answered a number of questions that I've thrown at you over the years as well while being on council, and that's been really great. So I just, it was with a little bit of sadness that we see you go, but I hope that you enjoy your retirement with your wife and family, and thank you for your time at Environment South.
Thanks, Lloyd. Colin, would you like to say a few words?
Well, I'd like to thank the council for their support over the time, and it's been a privilege to work with the council, and it's been a very enjoyable time, and I hope that all my work and all the work that will continue with the with the shovel-ready works will still continue, and will be in a good position in the future, looking after our community for South. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin, and we could show you a virtual card or a present, but it will get to you in, as soon as possible, and just all the best for the future, Colin, and thanks for the enormous contribution you've made to this organisation over a very long period of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move to item 3. No, we haven't done item 3. Declarations of interest. I'm not aware of any this morning. Item 5, public forums, petitions and deputations. I'm also not aware of any this morning. So we'll move to item 6, which is the confirmation of minutes. So first up is the ordinary meeting of council on the 13th of October. Do we have a mover? Moved by Lloyd, seconded by Jeremy. Any alterations or changes? If not, I will put the resolution. All in favour will say aye. Aye. And the second is the extraordinary meeting of council of the 3rd of November. We have a move by Jeremy, seconded by David. Any changes or alterations? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Move to item 7, which is the adoption of committee resolutions for the strategy and policy meeting. Normally I'd ask Eric to make a few comments, but unfortunately he's not here this morning. So would somebody like to move? Moved by David, seconded by Lyndall. Any comments, alterations to those minutes? I'm not hearing any. I will put the adoption of the resolution. We'll say aye. Aye. Move to item 8, which is the notification of extraordinary urgent business, supplementary reports or other. I'm not aware of any this morning. Move to item 9, which is questions. I have not been made aware of any questions this morning. So we'll now move to Chairman and Councillor reports. There is a list of the meetings I've attended. I might just verbally briefly mention that, as you're all aware, we've started having meetings with the community to talk about what our science is telling us, about the gaps and the way forward over a generation. We've had a number of small meetings. I've also attended the Federated Farmers Executive a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's good that we get out there and have these conversations, because one thing the science is telling us that we individually and collectively all need to start doing more now, and that will make the way forward a lot easier. So we're outlining the problem. We're outlining the journey, and it is a journey. And at the end of it, the goal is that we will have an environment that's second to none, and we will have our children and grandchildren living and enjoying the things that most of us did in the past, with probably the best fresh water in the world and actually getting premium products as a result of it. So a number of more meetings organised before Christmas, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more afterwards, because this is a message we do need to get out. We had a combined meeting of all councils on Monday that many of us attended, and some of the discussions included the local government reform that's coming at us. Reports, we've only had an initial report, but obviously the status quo will not remain, and it was heartening to see that there was the overall response was, let's take a proactive stance on this for South and going forward. So no doubt there'll be more happening on that going forward. We also briefly talked about changes to the RMA. It was very high level, but again, this is a significant change that's coming at us at the moment. So if there's any questions of any of my activities, happy to answer them. Peter.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a question: how were you received at the Federated Farmers? Was the message received quite well, do you think?
Oh, I felt it was. We had about Rachel and I were there for about 2 hours, and we had a very good discussion. And I think everywhere we're going, at the end of the meeting, people are saying, "We appreciate you coming," and I think that's something we need to take on board. We don't need to fear getting out and talking to people. We've got a message, and people may not agree with it all, but having the chance to have a conversation is really appreciated. If there's no further questions.
I was going to give a
Oh yes, I'll move now to councillor reports. So Lloyd,
I'll just give a brief information line as usual. I've been prowling around the province in the last month, as usual, particularly up and down the Waio River, talking to farmers and other stakeholders there, looking at the effect of the reduction in the river flow, which is an ongoing issue for some of those in terms of erosion and things. Had a look at the restored whitebait habitat. That's a project that's underway down at the mouth of the river, and the work of the QE2 Trust in that area with getting the covenants underway, particularly the work of Trustee Hui there. Just had a science and technology fair, quite a reduced one because in the circumstances, but good to see the usual suspects there: Woodlands, Myris Bush, Halfmoon Bay, Lime Hill School, which are all schools with their feet in the rural community, and projects that are very much relating to the work that we are doing. So good to see a younger generation coming on. Thank you.
Do we have any further verbal reports from councillors? David?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just obviously we all, well, most of us I think, attended the awards evening, which I thought was very successful considering the situation. I think very popular winners on the night. Just a bit sad that not everybody in Southland can see just what takes place throughout Southland, because unless you're involved, it's just quite surprising. But no, it was a good night, and I thought Lyndall's speech was exceptional. But no, seriously, no, it was excellent. We've got a debriefing tomorrow as to how it went and just any changes or whatever. I think it was held under extreme conditions, really, the judging side of it. And I just have to say thank you to the staff that were involved. They did a tremendous job actually getting the whole thing put together and coordinating the actual judging of it and the evening as well. So thank you.
Yes, I'd like to endorse those comments that the staff and the judges managed to pull off a spectacular night. And one of the common comments afterwards, people were saying it's just great to be able to get out and go to something. And so a lot of people have basically said it's too hard and they're not holding functions. So congratulations. I know it wasn't easy and COVID changes could have affected it right to the last minute, but it went off really well. So well done, everyone. I've got Peter, then Lloyd.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to endorse those comments. It was a great evening, very well organised, and of course we're seeing events that have been cancelled around the province now, and I think for the sake of well-being, maybe the Environment Awards were a good example of pushing through those uncertainties and finding a way around it, because these events are very important for a lot of people in their social calendar, and we need to keep those connections if we can. So well done, everybody.
Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not actually a report, but council's role is to get out into the community and have meetings, as you've suggested, and there's more meetings planned. I'm just wondering, can we actually continue to do that in the traffic light system that seems to be coming up, and what does that actually mean? So I don't actually want an answer. I'd just like us as a organisation to start to think about how will we actually deal with this, and can we continue to do our work streams with this change that's effectively coming at the end of the month?
No, that's certainly a good point, and having the proof of vaccines is obviously going to be very important for any of these meetings. So staff can probably come back to us on that.
So just briefly, councillors, we have a business continuity approach to the COVID situation as it's emerging. We have a plan for the situation should any of us end up with COVID-19 or any of our family. So we can brief you on that more fulsomely at another time, but we're very aware of that. The incident management team is a permanent fixture and has been all of this year, and is working through this at a policy level and following government policy guidelines. So we can brief you on the traffic light policy later or now, or
Well, I
maybe
think we need to get it in before we know what's actually there. It still looks like there's still some variance coming through.
So there are two different things. One is how we are going to respond ourselves anyway, so that we know what we need to do, and that we're quite clear about. But the incident management team is over the government announcements on a daily basis and meets regularly on that matter. We meet as an executive on COVID matters every week as well.
But the reason I say that, Mr. Chairman, is that it looks like the restrictions may be more around numbers than what we have had up until now, at least in the foreseeable future. So we had 100, maybe 50, and then we need to understand the audience as well. So.
Yep. So we'll keep you appraised of that.
And I think it's not even clear what's been announced, so probably the dust will settle over the next few days and we can clarify. Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, further to what you're discussing there, one of the things we may not have considered is ideas around fairness. If there are people unable to come into the hall because they're unvaccinated, then they'll feel they haven't got a voice and so on and so on. So we might have to somehow cover that. I would suspect that particularly if the matters were important, such as consultation requirements. However, these particular meetings may not fall under that category.
That's a good point, Robert, on whether we can have a Zoom link. But it's another thing we need to actually have to think about, but it's a pretty clear message that's coming from the government that no jab, you are going to be restricted, but obviously we need to be able to accommodate other people if that happens, maybe electronically. Any further reports this morning? If not, we will move to the staff report, item 11, and the first one up is the Acting Chief Executive's report. Wimmer, would you like to comment on your comprehensive report this morning?
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to thank the staff for the very comprehensive provision of notes to me in this report. So I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights. The one that I really was wanting to lead off with is one that you've already mentioned, councillors, which is that we had our 25th Environment Awards, and they were a really good evening despite the COVID situation that we held them in, and certainly the award winners were an impressive array from a very high calibre of entries. And the commentary that arose from those awards, certainly from councillor judges, was the need to sort of ensure that we actually gave those award winners some more airtime. So the communications team have been working through a social media plan with that. But also beyond the communication aspects of that, we're looking at sort of, working with some of those award winners for a sort of longer term association. And you'll have noticed on page 37 of your papers that staff are working in the catchment integration team with the team from SIT Environmental Management course on their microplastics work, which was quite an impressive presentation that evening. And they're doing work with them linking to Enviro Schools into the catchment work group program. So expect to see more of that kind of activity, I think, in this space. The work of the organisation continues apace. There's no small amount of it. The policy and planning team are advancing the rather critical aspects of the proposed Southland Water and Land Plan. The technical experts' work is commencing this week for the hearings, which are due for the 14th of March. So that work is going to be continuing right through to virtually Christmas in the lead up to the March hearings. And while that's apace, the Regional Forum is still working through its economic scenarios, which you councillors are going to be briefed on this afternoon, for those of you staying to the TAMI board meeting this afternoon. The regional policy statement work is well underway as well, and work closely is underway there with Marama on developing the visions, but also to ensure that the regional policy statement is aligned with the requirements for the NPSFM. So in the science space, there has been a significant amount of work to develop a new and comprehensive science strategy for the organisation, and that work is heading to a conclusion by the end of the year. It's going very well at this point, and it's going to be informing the work program throughout this LTP. The science team have, of course, been extremely busy also in briefing the regional forum on its work program and in developing the work in association with the economic advisors on the scenarios that the regional forum have been testing. The next regional forum workshops are due from the 8th and 9th of December, in which another round of those scenarios will be discussed. The environmental challenges Hui, that is part of our non-regulatory program of work. We had our last Hui with the group on early November, wasn't it? I think I'm trying to recall actually that we just towards the end of last month, we asked the attendees to provide us with a survey. They'll come back to us with a set of issues that they'd like us to pursue. We're talking to our partners in Type 5 around how best to do that, and advancing a work program. We were looking to integrate all of the work that's going on amongst our partner organisations and ourselves to ensure that we've actually got a comprehensive program of work across non-regulatory space, filling in any gaps, but also wanting to avoid duplication of work where it's not necessary. There's a meeting this evening at the Auditor Catchment Group, and the website material has been up and live on all matters relating to this program from the 14th of November. The other highlights, I think, just to point out a few matters, the climate resilience projects are well underway, and particularly in the Gore area and also with the Stead Street work. We've got staff here to talk to any of these issues should you like to ask them any specific questions. I'd like to point out the extensive work that's been going on in the biodiversity biosecurity area, in particular though that the Undaria diver training has been completed, and as of the time that this was written, the divers were applying to WorkSafe to gain the diver certificate, and I think that Ali might be able to update you even further on that, because this work has been going apace. I think this is was really unseated by COVID there for a while, and it's to Ali's credit that she's really managed to push this through and for that program to still be underway and to meet the summer work program. So all of the work in that area is ramping up towards the summer season. I'd just like to point out in the compliance area about the extent of work that's going on there, and also the fact that we're meeting our statutory timeframes at 100% and have done in this quarter. The intensive winter grazing consent applications, there's a report about that on page 35. And just wanted to point out there that we are working very closely with the Otago Regional Council and with the Environment Canterbury to ensure that we're getting consistency in our approach, which is a matter that I know central government are interested in, as well as ourselves. And perhaps just a couple of other matters that are of note. I'd just like to mention the Bluff Safety Management System work that's been underway, particularly highlighting the tragedy that occurred in Bluff last weekend, that there's been significant work around boating signage and in that safety program, and note that the chair made a statement at the weekend extending the organisation's condolences to the families involved. But just also to note that there's a significant amount of work been going on in the communication and with the Harbour Master in relation to boating safety. We're busy with recruitment. We're still filling positions from the reorganisation, but we have a lot of people now on board that are new faces and that you'll have met in the last few weeks, including the staff in the strategy group, which I'm very pleased to welcome, and also that our Waka Kotahi workplace survey, our internal survey, is out for staff to complete this week, and you've all experienced the 14-character password moment today, councillors, at this meeting. highlight for the last couple of months has been the completion of the annual report, and we're dealing with that at today's meeting. So, any questions? Start with
Lord.
you, take it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was a full report, and I actually quite enjoyed reading it, and it reminded me of how much work is actually going on. But on page 32, there's a comment there under pest animals, and I was a little bit intrigued to see that the operations helicopter survey to complete the initial aerial survey of the arete, and then there's some follow-up areas, and on rabbits, and I didn't actually fully know or understand what this was actually about.
I see Ali wanting to leap to her feet at this point.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We hadn't surveyed the arete for rabbits for a while, and the catchment team were taking a helicopter up to have a look at something. Sorry, so Dave jumped in the helicopter with them with his binoculars and with cameras trying to look at where there was areas of rabbit movement or high areas of rabbits where he could then go and report and find out whether we had a rabbit problem. So he was able to sort of map areas to then follow up on a report, just from like being able to see from the helicopter where.
So can I just follow up, Mr. Chairman, is it rabbits or rabbits and hares? What colour? I presume you're doing thermal.
It's just rabbits, as far as I'm aware, but he will have been noting hares as well, but he was specifically looking for rabbits out on the
I'd imagine you see quite a few deer on the helicopter flight as well on that catchment.
He would probably have been spotting them too. They're on the pest management plan, so.
Helen.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. No, a good report, Wilma, so well done. I just want to pick up on gravel management. I know there has been some discussion over is there a broader thinking towards how we look out for the build-up of gravel, particularly around areas where we've got major infrastructure, as in bridges and roads close by. I think traditionally we've been digging where there's the centre place, we've been digging holes, and is that now? Probably we'll still dig holes, but are we looking at other ways to ensure that that infrastructure is safer or less at risk? And I think, can I give an opening for?
Yeah, I can see Raymond's about to leap to his feet. So.
Chair, so we've been doing a lot of work in the area and appreciating suggestions that the February 2020 flood highlighted in terms of gravel and gravel management. Doing particularly a focus in that town our basin on management of those river systems and how we can utilise gravel extraction demand and affect the local river management. And it's an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing focus of work for us, and obviously an ongoing discussion with particularly conservation, especially against personal members that have their ponds started to provide a lot of benefit from a river management perspective. And it's been the focus of the discussion, particularly with regard to NAC and Michigan. And that leads into some work that IA's team have been involved with on the upper island, looking at extraction techniques, the effectiveness of that from a river management perspective, but also on what activities we have work. The basis of conversation but it is a work in progress and there's still quite a bit of work to be done, particularly in terms of cross-section survey work to be an understanding of the reserves picture and need to more confident in make some decisions around how to develop that
I know Lloyd wants to follow on that one too, but I guess a supplementary to that, we've talked for a long time about having that integrated catchment management and having the other parties to work with us and let our engineers do those sort of full reach type remediations. It's heartening to hear the conversations with Doc in recent times, very supportive of skimming, leaving a water barrier so that predators can't get to where the birds are nesting, which is a really encouraging move forward. And I know we do have a sort of a generic consent in the Te Anau Basin, and there's been talk for years about perhaps having something across the other catchments which would enable us to move more quickly when a problem's identified. I mean, there's been the issues with NZTA over the years where you get built up at a bridge and it often takes a long time to actually get action. Would you like to comment on that?
Chair, yes, it's, as I say, there is quite a body of work involved with it. Certainly wanting to get to a point where action operations has provided consents to extract revenue, so we can optimise the river management benefits associated with that. I guess it's put it that Aparema work, but it's beach skimming, but it's beach skimming focused on widening that river view, so it's not necessarily taking it from exposed beaches, but it's actually pushing some of the colonising vegetation back instead of and I guess, you know, that okay, well, in some instances, what we do operationally, I guess, there's some impacts associated with it, but in terms of river management, what's best from a river management perspective is also best from an ecosystem as well. So it strikes me as being a bit of a no-brainer, and I think the conversations that we have today are really positive in terms of change.
Thanks. Lloyd, did you have also?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, Robert, I've been reminded this morning there's a bridge in the north and south there, I'm pretty sure, that they are trying to urgently get gravel away from because they believe in the next flood it's going to disappear. But it seems to be tied up in a process, not an urgency of looking after an asset.
I'm not aware of that specific issue. I can say a few weeks ago that there were conversations around I've been working with NZTA providing a way on that. I'm not sure.
I'll follow up after the meeting.
Sorry, is it the timing?
I'll get you the actual bridge name and I'll come back to you. But yeah, there's a bridge up there the locals are very concerned about and they can't do it. But it's tied up in process, but if we have a flood, it's gone, apparently.
Further questions on the report? Because I have one question, just I see on page 15, we're talking about intensive winter grazing consents. Are we actually getting very many of them?
We have had 4 today, but mainly been multi-farm operations for some of the bigger operators. And generally speaking, they've been moving through with a bit of dialogue reasonably smoothly. We are liaising with the Regional Council weekend with the Senate report there. There's desire to create some general consistency across the organisations in the West South Island that have a regulatory role. We do have some slight divergence in that area at the moment, so we're sort of talking through that. But we're obviously gearing up for what will be a much more significant influx next year, and trying to make that process reasonably clear with the tools that are being developed today, and also some guidance materials that we can work through and get the conclusion reasonably quickly.
Thanks for that, Bruce. Neville.
Just an explanation of a mnemonic here, the KIECO taxonomic database. What are those initials stand for? I can't see a full interpretation anywhere in the report. That's under science. In operations.
Mr. Chair, I'll speak to it within the John Cases section, and it's a database we use for storing macroinvertebrate information. So it's kind of like working out the family tree and how you store it in a database that is then shared with all councils so that we can do nationwide reporting and that we are comparing similar levels between councils. The actual, what each letter stands for, I'm sorry, or how you can look things up.
Thank you.
Software.
I guess just a supplementary on that, when we have talked for a while about the amount of data out there, and science is a good example. Sometimes it's siloed, you might have NEOWIS, you might have others. Are we making progress on being able to get all that in one spot and being shared, or is there still barriers?
It's a work in progress. I think it's the best way you can put it. All all regional councils are working very closely so that we can align our software. And within council, we have a working group looking at it as well.
Thanks, Elaine. Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Just one question, really. This is on the biosecurity, biodiversity operation. So I'm just a little bit intrigued as to, this is wild and conifer work is continuing, but we're still concerned about a growing number of Douglas fir plantations, especially those planted in the south of wild and conifer management area. So where exactly is the wild and conifer management area? Do we have a specific area that we're obviously more concerned about Douglas firs, or is it not the whole province?
So through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, as part of the pest management plan, there's an area mapped out in Southland which has been deemed really high risk for wilding conifers. So it's one of the appendices to the management plan, which I can share with council if need be. But there is a map which has been looked at as particularly high risk. And we know that there are Douglas fir plantations going in on farms in those areas. That is, we have got no way of preventing them from.
So probably supplementary on that one is, we've complained for some time that the NES and plantation forestry is too weak and it needs to be strengthened. That there's been talk of it happening, but so far it doesn't appear to be. I know in that northern Southland area there are trees that are likely to cause troubles, but at the moment there's probably nothing we can do about it unless the NES was changed. Is that? But Ellen, you were going to have a...
Well, I just, what options do exist or can exist to modify that? If we have a concern, what can we do about that concern?
My understanding is that because the afforestation side is managed by the Ministry for Primary Industries and through the RMA, and it's a different piece of legislation to the Biosecurity Act, there's nothing in the Biosecurity Act that we can do to stop it happening. We have been, the legal policy team has been working with Ministry for Primary Industries on our concern on the way these grants of these consents and the rules around the consents and when it's a discretionary activity, but at the moment it's very little we can do. And Fiona Bruce, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
So just from the consenting side is Chairman Holly's comment that the NES around plantation forestry is a reasonably enabling document for the industry, and it has resulted in some of those parties and some of those sort of sensitive areas, say up in the far catchment, for instance, which we don't really have any consenting role in. And I was certainly aware of my compatriot at Southern District Council. Southern District Council has been similarly lobbying for some changes to the NES to give more discretion and more control around the regulatory agencies. So that dialogue is ongoing, as I understand it. And they've also had a delegation down to the NPI to look at some localised issues. At the moment, we have a limited capacity to deal with the consenting process. So I think we'll be continuing that lobbying and raising localised concerns as probably continue to get the good maybe.
And I think we can provide you with some links and some briefing notes, I think, in the council briefing next week.
Jeremy.
Just one quick clarification, just on page 9, we're talking about the sites that are below the actual policy statement. 20. Just you've got 3, 9 and 13. It'd be just good to know how many sites we do monitor out of them. And it's just 3 out of how many are that are.
Okay.
Let me just quickly, how many sites do we monitor? It's just got in the bottom.
Yeah, so you can see that.
So it's just say 3, 9 and 13 sites. Quickly, how many sites do we actually monitor, just to clarify?
On page 9.
Page 29 or
29 or 9.
29 or 9.
Bottom paragraph.
Just doesn't say how many sites we actually monitor.
No, it
It's
talks
just
about 2/3 of the monitored sites, but it doesn't say how many sites.
For the, it is 76, I think, off the top of my head. There will be a workshop looking closely into this with you coming up before Christmas, but 76 is what I remember.
Any further questions on that report? If not, you've got a comment. would you like to make to?
Yes, thank you, Mr Chair. Sorry, I meant to just add to the report that you have in front of you with just a bit of an update about rates, which of course has been a major part of the last few weeks for the finance team, and that we are now sitting at about 10% of total properties being on direct debit, which is really an excellent outcome. It's a very big increase from the last 2 years, and about a quarter of those have gone to the 3 payment plan, which Tani has noted as being well appreciated by those that are actually signing up to it. So it's been a busy time, of course, as it always is for the team. I think the view is, though, that we haven't experienced a particularly high level of queries this time, and that's been good, but we are expecting, I think it's at the end of this week that it closes, isn't it, the rate is closed. So it's been a busy period, but a very good outcome.
Thanks. If there's any further questions? Moved by Neville, seconded by Lloyd. All in favour will say aye. Aye. We'll move to item 2, which is the annual report and summary. I'll ask Wilma to kick off the discussion, and I see Tani was ready to answer any financial questions. So Wilma.
Right, so councillors, thank you for your feedback on the draft of the annual report at the OPAC meeting. We've taken those comments and notes and have adapted the report and made alterations to it. We also have some alterations that have been from our partner Te Ao Marama to the pages that refer to their work, which we need to go through with you as well today. I'm accepting that we've read the report again, and so just want to comment on the changes that we made in this report at your request, pointing out that there were 2 matters that you asked us to consider. One was whether there could be a statement from Te Ao Marama in this report, which has not been possible in the timeframes, and also a request around considering council attendance at meetings, which also in the timeframe was not feasible to put into this report. But we note that those are both, comments for us for future reporting. So thank you for that. We've made the amendments in the Chief Executive and Chairman's report as discussed, including more specificity around the figures relating to the operating deficit and the surplus. And that's flown through, of course, to the summary document as well. We also made amendments to the financial matters that councillors raised in relation to the $2,000 rounding variance in the text and in the in one of the graphs. So those have both been done. So are there any comments in relation to the changes from councillors' perspective? And then I'll take you through the 4 alterations that we need to make on behalf of Te Ao Marama.
Not seeing any at this stage, so I think we can move from on the page to page where the changes are.
Right. So in terms of the changes that you're not aware of, councillors, because the notes have come through to us and have been seen by audit only yesterday, they relate to some small typographical and tiny changes to the text on page 4. Just to be aware that on 3 occasions on this page, Mata Waka has been written without its macrons, and so those have been included now. also on page 4 in the last bullet point that reads in your text that the Ngāi Tahu Murihiku Resource Management Plan was referred to and reported against when assessing resource consent applications. Te Ao Marama have asked that the words "and policy and plan development" be included, which is an accurate reflection of the work that we've been doing. On page 5, there is the rewording of the second bullet point, which reads, currently council continue to offer the 50-50 shared arrangement to fund an iwi policy officer position, and that has changed as a result of the funding arrangements over time from what was originally written into the charter. So more accurately, Te Ao Marama have asked that changes to read, contribute to funding for a kai tohu position, which reflects the name of the staff member as well as the changed arrangements of 50-50. And, sorry, so there was one last change on page 97 of your report. In which the title, I can't find the paragraph quickly.
To the top of the page, the liaison changing people at the time.
Is it the very first paragraph?
I think it could be. I think it was second line.
Oh, sorry, it's the actual title. So at the top of page 97, the title iwi liaison has been asked to be changed to Roku Taio, which is the accurate reflection of the group.
Which is reflected later in the paragraph.
In the paragraph as well, yes. So those are the changes, and those changes have been approved by our auditors.
Lord, you had
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm happy with those changes. But that aside, when we got the update through for this meeting, it would be really nice to have had highlighted the paragraphs or the things that get actually done in yellow.
Yes.
So we can refer back, because otherwise we're looking for key things that will be easier to go through and look at the changes that were made just by a straight highlight.
Yep. That's
From a practical sense.
Very good point.
the previous iteration did have that, didn't it?
It did, and I do apologise.
I don't need the full track changes, I just need the,
No, just the
highlight in yellow, the new paragraph or new sentence. We can always go back to the other draft we've got if we want to refer to it.
Yes. I think that probably because the majority of them were in that chairman's report.
Yes, they were.
They were quite evident, but yes, I do agree with you. Sorry for that.
Any changes you'd like to highlight, Tony, or there wasn't much on the financial, was there?
No, there was not much, Chair. We corrected an error, small error in the Hui, which had been pointed out. There's a request to add some clarity around grants paid and contributions, which we did. There's also a request to discuss the RSHL value. We made that amendment. The auditors asked us to remove it, so it is as it is. And outside that, Chair, I think we did actually move, as Mr. Robertson had pointed out, that particular first financial page. We moved it 2 pages over to sort of make it up a little more readable. And there is more work we could do on that in the future.
And we've changed its title.
Lloyd.
Mr. Following on from that, there was a suggestion at the OPAC meeting that we sort of start to think now about how we prepare next year's annual report in summary, and we were asked specifically look at the Queenstown one because they have a different format with graphs and those sorts of things to look at. Can I suggest, Mr. Chairman, that we sort of do that and start to think about the next report even now and not in the last minute, and while it's ever changing, we can always improve for easeability.
I agree.
Good to pick that up.
Chair, there's a new standard, a new financial reporting standard for performance measures. will be current when we report to the council next year. And it specifically lays out greater expectations, particularly around measuring the performance and how we display them, and brings consistency to the council.
That sounds good, because in recent years we've been told we don't have to have the detail we had in the past, so this is probably a bit of a tidy up, which would be useful. Any further questions at this stage on the annual report?
I'm happy to move the recommendations.
I'll just make a statement, Mr. Chair, that it's probably one of the strongest balance sheets that the council's had in a long time, and the cash position has never been stronger. I would suspect that at the end of the financial year and going into this more important period of time when we have been a little bit low on cash, waiting for the next lot of rates to come in. So I think that's probably a thanks to all the staff and central government for the funding of projects. And I guess our ability to actually get our projects forward and get funded. So even though we lost a lot of revenue out of cruise ships, we seem to have been able to gain other revenue sources and see this council still in good shape. So congratulations to the team for looking out for the business.
Thank you, Alan. Are you seconding anything?
Have to after that.
Any further discussion? Tanya, would you like to make a comment?
Remind councillors that we're also, item 2, requesting the chair to approve to sign the bit of representation for the auditor, as well as acknowledging and adopting the
So do we have a motion?
So I just need to check with Jane, do we need to choose the specific amendments to?
What you're doing is you're adopting the report as amended by discussions today, the ones that were highlighted, that the resolution will reflect that and include in that second part that the chairman signed.
I'm happy to move both parts of that recommendation if that's allowable, otherwise I'll be happy to move them separately.
Together.
That's fine, we'll just probably add as amended, which the move and seconder I'm sure we're happy with. No further discussion, I will put that motion. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Against? No. Carry.
So those small changes will also go into the summary document.
Yes.
And so that we don't need to approve that in separate.
No, because it was as per amendment, so one flows to the other.
And I checked across. Yeah.
Okay, we'll move to item 3, which is the Te Puka Rekiora Trust Predator-Free Rekiora project. And would you like to comment on the report?
So what we are seeking is a nomination from either council or staff to sit as a trustee on the Predator-Free Rekiora project.
Thank you for that. This is, a very exciting project. If we can achieve a predator-free Rekiora, that would be the largest island in the world. So it's an ambitious project, and the request is for somebody that would represent ES on that governance panel. But just a question before we get there. I'm assuming Ali and one or two of our staff who work behind the scenes, will you still be, not in the governance role, but you'd still be involved in the actual project?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, I think the intention is that a staff member would sit on what was the leadership group, but it's been morphed into the engagement and advisory role. And in the short term, that will be me, but as it becomes more of an engagement role, there might be other members of staff that's more appropriate to fill that role.
The bit that comes out of that is reporting back to council. How do we efficiently report back to council? Is it through the staff connection, or is it through the appointment of the trustee back to council?
It's probably through both, depending on what's being discussed and the type of reporting needed. So I think staff would be reporting back on the engagement and the progress in terms of the community and community support, and the person sitting on the governance group should be reporting back on on the actual projects and the governance, and any issues that would relate to Environment Southland's long-term involvement in the biosecurity border.
So, Mr. Chairman, is that back to council itself or to one of the committees? Which one?
The regional services one.
For both?
Or both.
I'm just trying to get clarification because if we understand the process, then that actually helps us to appoint the trustee. So, because I could actually see two reports coming in, maybe it's at a council level for certain things, but it's at a committee level for other matters of update. So it depends on how you view that to where it comes in.
I would assume the dominant report will come through regional services, but I take your point that maybe times where we'd elevate it directly to council, but I think in the main, my view would be go straight to its regional services.
Yes. I think when it comes to the trustee reporting, the broader issue of trustee reporting in general to council, I think, is a piece of work we need to look at from a reporting perspective. I'd be keen to have that conversation with councillors in relation to all of the trusts that we have, governance, that we've got governance responsibilities for, because I think that there are two different reporting types, and it may be that OPAC is the appropriate place for some of that reporting to come back to, or directly to council if you would prefer, but I think we need to talk about that in relation to the range of trusts that we actually have relationships to with at governance level.
I was just saying if it helps the Whakamanate Waituna Trust report go through regional services.
Yes, it does, but that's also one of the trusts where at a governance layer perhaps there should be an additional reporting process. Yeah.
And there's well points.
And there's also others as well.
For Peter, then Lyndall.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just looking at here's the purpose to decide whether a member of the council or executive leadership team, and then looking down at point number 4, it looks as though the other appointments will be made out of management, and I wonder if we follow suit with that, and given the project's importance, that should be probably reflective and maybe a senior manager or something along those lines being appointed from this council as opposed to government. It's just a suggestion. Anyone in mind or any suggestions?
Look, as we've talked about this, there's a number of people who have expressed interest, including Rob Phillips, our CEO, who, as most of you know, has a national link and quite a role in the biodiversity area. But it's up to this council to make up their mind. When we met with this group, I made the comment that we would try and find the person best suited. So I don't think there has to be a delineation. You're right. I think at this stage most other entities have not put a governance person on. Doesn't mean you can't. But I've got Lyndall, then Neville.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just 2 questions, if I might. The independent trustees that are listed in the summary, can you give us an idea of the nature of those independent trustees currently?
They is going to be I don't know if recruitment is the right word, but there is going to be a process that has gone through to appoint those trustees. Members of the engagement and advisory group, as well as 2 of the existing trustees, will be doing interviews and recruitment to try and recruit those right people. So yeah, can't say who it's going to be. They're hoping to get the agency staff and the mana whenua, or the agency mana whenua sorted first, and then go out to the independents based on what
So
needs and skills and that type of thing.
That adds a certain element of on the ground input into that governance layer potentially. Okay. So my other question is then, I'm wondering if it is more helpful for council to consider appointing the role rather than the person. So appointing the CE rather than Rob specifically, but that, I'm just putting that out there, that may not be helpful in the long term, but it's just that's a thought. Given that Rob's really interested in and certainly has the skills and contacts and governance experience, absolutely not negating that, but I just wonder if in long term that role might be better via the role rather than the person. I'm not sure. Just a question.
Well, I think we hamstring ourselves a bit if we actually concentrate on a role. I think if we stick to the best person for the job and the initial term is for a 3-year period, I think we would just do it on that basis. Neville.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just support what Peter raised about the paragraph 4. The trustee appointments at the moment are management people, and it would seem to me that someone like our current chief executive would be ideal in that role, and reflect our evaluation of the importance of the appointment to the position.
I think that's a good point, and indeed, the conversation I've had was understanding governance, good rapport with iwi, but also national contacts. This is a big project, and the ability to leverage was also one of the things that was put in there. Look, I'll test the meeting by nominating Rob Phillips as an individual rather than me. So that was seconded by Lord Esler. Any further discussion or further nominations? Now, I know we've a number of capable governance people in the room who are interested in this project, but what I'm hearing around the room is that for this initial period, there might. But if there's no further comment, I'll test it by we've had a motion moved and seconded. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. Well done. Right, we'll move to item 4, which is the councillors' meeting schedule. Do we have any additions, subtractions?
The only change that I'm aware of to this meeting schedule is we had a council workshop set down for next Thursday on the RPS. That's been, the topic of that workshop is changing, and it's going to be a science update, and it won't take all day. We're allowing about an hour and a half for that session. So.
What date is that, Jim?
It's Thursday, the 2nd of December. I think it might take a one minute. Any questions? I think that's clear.
There'll be a Heritage Building Trust meeting.
There is, will be good.
There is.
Oh, that's the AGM.
Could be a poll.
And can I just comment that the science workshop is will cover off some of the matters that councillors have asked us to brief them on in relation to water and land.
Good. Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just questioning the nature of the mid-term review, which is scheduled for the 6th of December. It's late for a mid-term review, but I'm just wondering what that is.
This will be Graham Narchi's, isn't it?
It is. I think that's because we've traditionally called it that, and however, I think the content of the review will be useful and timely at this time as opposed to a mid-term review. I think that's a hangover of title, isn't it? As opposed to what we're actually going to be talking about.
Well, some of you remember very early in the place, we had Graham and gave us a bit of advice around governance and various aspects. I think he's a guy with a lot of experience, probably getting close to retirement. I think it was to be earlier, but the COVID situation has meant that it is later than usual. But I think in the lead up to, we'll have one year in front of us before elections, it is probably quite, I think it's timely that we have those discussions, so.
So the Bluff Museum board meeting next Monday.
Thank you.
I'm presuming that the acting chief executive may not be going and I'll stand in, or I'm the deputy.
So what date is that?
Monday morning, 9 o'clock.
It's coming Monday. Yeah, I won't be because I'm not actually going to be in Avocado on Monday. So.
And they've stopped contacting us about that meeting, so they're obviously going to you directly. I'm not in the loop at all.
Sorry, I'll forward those things to you.
So I'm very happy to attend the meeting, but I have to attend my Zoom.
No, I'll check them.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll check the appointments.
Anybody else with any meetings that are attending or intending to attend and they're not on the list? No requests for leave?
I'll second the recommendation.
Moved by Alan, seconded by Lloyd. All in favour say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to item 5.
So councillors, you'll recall you made a decision about this at the previous council meeting. This is simply to update you for your information with the recommendation which included your comments and changes so that you have a copy of what was finally sent to the ministry. So it's there for your information.
Comments or questions? If not, would somebody like to recommendation? Moved by Neville, seconded by Jeremy. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Right, move to item 6, which is reporting of commitments entered into delegated authority.
This is just a tidying off of reporting as required by the council's delegations manual. There are a number of projects that are associated with the shovel ready and the jobs for nature work, and that are significantly above the delegation provided to the chief executive and the general manager jointly. Part of our annual program of works.
They appear to be all shovel ready projects. Any, Lloyd?
Yes, Jim, I may be wrong with this, but I thought that the 300,000 was an older number, and I thought we'd moved it up to close to 500,000. We hadn't. Okay.
Up to 300.
Up to 300, okay.
So that was 2,300 for the shovel ready.
Lyndall?
Just a detailed question. What is 464,000 euros in another kind of money? Or do I not want to know that figure really?
Divide it by 0.6.
Yeah, 0.6, is it?
It's a bigger number.
And it would depend on the day the currency
yeah.
comes through and the bills are actually paid, but yes.
I'm assuming this was for the Archimedes.
Yes.
Any further questions or comments?
Just on the wildlife contract for ecological surveys for 4 years, how are we looking to be spending around $2 million with the entity?
Yes, that's what's been committed to over that entire period of time. It's spelt out on a yearly basis what the commitments will be in the contract and what areas are being covered.
And so what areas are they looking to do?
I don't have that specific in front of me. It's an Ellie area and she's left the meeting, unfortunately. I can get that for you.
It's over the two areas. I think it's the mid dome and the Tringatura area, which has been brought up secondary.
I can certainly find out for you and let you know.
Probably be interesting for us all just to have a breakdown on that. Any further comments on that item?
I'll move the recommendation, Chair.
Moved by Neville, second for that, Alan. All in favour, say aye.
Common seal, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Moved by Lloyd, seconded by Jeremy, all in favour will say aye. Aye. That would appear to complete the public session this morning. So on that note, we'll say goodbye to any interested viewers who have been online, and we will go offline and
Yes, yeah, the resolution to move into public excluded will allow confirmation of minutes of council meeting held on the 13th of October, adoption of committee resolutions from Strategy and Policy Committee meeting on the 3rd of November to deal with item 8 Makarua riverbank erosion at Wallacestown and item 9 divisional update. The grounds matters are subject to proceedings in the Environment Court, and council is authorised to deliberate in private. To prevent the disclosure or use of information, official information for improper gain or advantage, to protect the privacy of natural persons, and to allow council to carry on without prejudice or disadvantage negotiations, including commercial and industrial.
thank you, Jan. Would somebody like to move that we move into public excluded? Moved by David, seconded by Alan. All in favour will say aye. Aye. I'm still seeing live on my screen.